when I photograph a wedding and there's another one called after shoot. So when I photograph a wedding, I come home with 4,000 images. A lot of them are duplicates, a lot of them are people have blinked, pictures on the dance floor, people are moving and it's blurry. It just didn't quite work out right. Or I've snapped 10 pictures of a tree to try to get my settings figured out before I take the picture of the client. Film days, we didn't do that, of course, but with digital now, you just quick. And it used to be I would either myself sit down for 4 or 5 hours and start looking through these images to take out all the duplicates, take out the out of focus pictures, take out all the blanking pictures, that kind of stuff. Or I would have an employee who would do that for me. And now there's AI programs that can do that for me. So I can put them in there and it takes out anything. I can set the parameters where I want that. It takes out anything that's blurry, takes out anything, marks out anything where people's eyes are closed.
Hi, and welcome to the 91 Day Success Podcast. I'm Jonathan, and today I am thrilled. I've got a local Grand Rapids native who I've known for almost a decade, Kari Douma from Kari Douma Photography, with me today. And we're not only going to talk about one of my favorite topics, photography, but also how AI is impacting professional photographers and how some are running away from it and some are embracing it and using it to grow their business and better serve their clients. So please give me a big warm welcome for Kari Douma. Kari, if you would, take 30 seconds or so and give us just a little bit of an overview of you and your business and maybe how you got into the professional photography business.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. As Jonathan said, I'm Kari Douma from Kari Douma Photography. My business is located in Granville, Michigan, right in the old downtown section of Granville. And I've been in that location for approximately 12 years. Absolutely love it in the area there. So that's fun. I photograph pretty much everything. So, what I like to do is build relationships with my clients and take care of their photographic needs. Photograph newborn babies, children, families, high school seniors, weddings, business headshots. And an example I always like to give is I might photograph a wedding and then later that year the mom might want the extended family picture, so I do the extended family picture for the big family, and then in the family needs the business headshot, and then the bride has a baby, so then I'm photographing her newborn, and I just build those relationships with those clients and take care of whatever their photographic needs are. That's pretty much what I do. I've been a photographer for about 23 years and got into it as a hobby and photographing my own children. Then it was the neighbor's kid, the cousin, and then it was the cousin's friend, and then the neighbor's friend. And all of a sudden I went, wait, am I really going to do this? Am I going to go into business and do this? And I jumped in with 2 feet and it took a lot of training. I have a master of wedding photography degree, a master of photography degree, both through Professional Photographers of America, and I'm a certified professional photographer through Professional Photographers of America.
I know from just our interactions over the last 10 years, I know you have a tremendous amount of training and you take amazing photos. I love
Thank you.
what you do with that. Talk to me a little bit as a business owner and obviously 2 decades now running your business. What are some of the struggles you've dealt with along the way and maybe how have you overcome them? Any memorable ones that you can think that might be of interest to our audience?
Oh, let's see. Memorable struggles. I would say the struggles of just like any small business for me personally is doing everything. I'm a very small business. I've had some part-time employees who have worked for me over the years doing different things from meeting with clients to holding my light at a wedding or helping me carry my gear around, that kind of stuff. And so I think that's a huge struggle is photography also tends to be very seasonal. I always say it's like the accountant during tax time. During the busy time of photography, which is usually about August through November, I'm just crazy every day, all day, every night, working, working, working. And then come January, I'm working on my blog and my social media and stuff like that, trying to up those things that I don't have time to work on during. the actual busy season. So I would say that's the struggle. And then the ever changing world of photography. Photography is one of those unlicensed businesses where you don't have to have a license to do photography. Anybody can do photography. And that makes it a little bit hard because there's so many people who love to do it and have the joy to do photography that a lot of people are turning to hobbyists and those type of photographers instead of hiring a professional. But it's the people who realize how important it is to have a professional photographer, to have a professional look on your business website, professional headshots versus the quick iPhone snap up against the brick wall in the office or something like that. Those are the clients or the people who really truly value beautiful portraits of their high school seniors or their babies. Those are the clients that are always going to be there for us.
Oh, that's awesome. And absolutely, I think like all of us, there's always competitors at different levels, and it's a matter of identifying that audience that's going to allow us to serve them best where we're adding value and it's a good value to us as a business owner as well. And you've obviously done a great job of doing that over the years. And kudos, because I've got to believe photography is a difficult business from that perspective, just because the barrier to entry is quite low. If anybody with a quote unquote digital camera and a smile could start photographing anything at that point. Am I incorrect about that?
You are correct about that. And it's funny because I talked to some photographers who have been in the business for 50 years. And they said the same thing when 35 millimeter cameras came out. And all of a sudden, you had all that back in the day, they called them weekend warriors. And all of a sudden, there were all these weekend warriors who were stealing their business. And it's a never ending struggle of any business owner, I'm sure, as times change and new things come out. And so, yeah, the entry level is low. And to be honest, that's how I got into it. That's where I sit there and go, everybody has a right to do what they want to do and start up that business at where they're at. And luckily, I learned early some good business practices and principles so I can remain in business and still keep my family fed and a roof over my head. So,
That's interesting. And we talked a little bit in the pre-call about artificial intelligence and what that's going to change, and we'll go there in a
yeah,
moment. But as I've been thinking about that, what you said really resonates with me. It really doesn't matter what point in time we look at. Photography has changed, as have so many other industries with technology. I love that concept. I remember there were the old large format cameras, and then we got into 35 millimeter, and then we went into digital and digital 35 or digital DSLRs, digital single lens reflex, I believe, and all of that. So AI is just a continuation of that as new technology that comes on and changes things. What have you seen over the years? Obviously, the benefit you've had a few years in business.
yeah,
How have you, as a business owner, we all often run into technology issues. How have you accommodated that? What's your perspective been as you've looked at that? Obviously, you've accommodated and incorporated those into your workflows to better serve your clients. But what does that look like from a business owner perspective? How do you decide what technologies to embrace? Which ones are fads? What things you need
yeah,
to be doing? Can you share anything with us there?
yeah. That's a hard question because so many people jump on any new bandwagon that comes out. Lighting has changed over the years. And, I am still using the same studio lights for the last 20 years that I've had in my studio. And I have friends who are photographers who have switched every time the wind blows and there's a new product out there. And this one's better, and this one's cordless, and this one's consistent lighting, and this one. And every time, it's every 2 or 3 years, something new is coming out. And I keep looking at mine going, it's not broke. Why am I trying to fix it? And I used to be that way with my camera equipment. The new camera would come out every year and a half. The manufacturers would replace the current model with a newer, improved model. And early in my years, I was always jumping on that new model. And now I'm like, does the new model give me a benefit business wise? Is it going to change something for me? And I've slowed down on that aspect. Now, with AI, that's changed things because I feel for me, a lot of the AI does give me a benefit in business. So I jumped on that bandwagon pretty early. which we can talk about how I use that coming up. But I think that's the thing I look at with something new is how is it going to benefit me and is it worth jumping onto? I can remember when Lightroom, which is a huge photographer's tool, was brand new. And in the beginning, I was saying, I don't understand. I have Photoshop. I don't know if I need Lightroom. This is a new product, but everybody's talking about it. I'll check it out and see what it is. And what really changed my workflow, made things a lot easier. So immediately I was like, absolutely, I can understand now why this is something good that's going to benefit my business. Makes my workflow easier.
Absolutely. One, and I think that's really good advice as a business owner is we need to take a look at technology and not necessarily be on what an old boss of mine used to call the bleeding edge of technology. We don't want to be too
Hmm.
far out in front. But at the same point, we want to look and determine which of those technologies really do add value and allow us to either be more efficient, to provide better service to our clients, better value to them, and then incorporate those that do. Talk to me a little bit. I know you've started to embrace a lot of the new things with AI, but I also know in your industry, a lot of professional photographers are running away from it like the sky is falling. Can you kind of share from you may understand their perspective better than I do?
Yeah.
What do you think they're thinking when they look at this? And again, I'm sure you've seen those too. They're turning and running and I'm never going to go here. I'm never going to do AI. It's not right. Almost like it's a principle based thing. And I'm not here to disagree or agree with them. I'm just curious, what mindset do you think that has in their businesses and why might they be taking that route as opposed to the route you've taken, which is say, hey, I can embrace aspects of this and really do more for my business?
Yeah. Agreed. So I feel like the photographers that I know that are reluctant to use AI, I think it's a couple things. It's people who are afraid that it's going to put them out of business. AI
Okay.
is going to replace the need for a photographer. So I think there's a little bit of fear about that. There's also a little bit of, I don't know what I would say, more of a, let's see, I'm trying to think of the word, an ethical solution. Yes, ethical. I think some people have an ethical problem with AI maybe taking over people's jobs. So, an example would be in the past, I had paid blog writers to write posts for my blog, and now I can do it on AI. So now I am taking money away from that blog writer. So I think there are some people who do have a hard time with that ethical portion of AI itself. Whereas I look at it as a small business owner, I need to do things that I need to do that save me time, save me money, so I can still maintain my business and keep things flowing and moving in my business. So to me, that was a good answer to my business
Mhm.
personally. I
And I
think
think that
that's the
makes,
problem.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you. No,
that's
I think
okay.
that makes a ton of sense. It reminds me of an argument I heard probably back in high school, maybe college, which was many years ago for me. But they were talking about the buggy whip industry. And as technology comes along, there are always people that are being replaced with new technologies. And I remember our professor at the time was talking about the buggy whip industry and was giving us an example that when the car came out, obviously the need for buggy whips, the whips that the drivers of the wagons that were being pulled by horses used, went into huge decline because we didn't need those for cars anymore. But he pointed out the fact that would we really today want to be in a situation where we had to take horse and buggy places just because we wanted to save those key jobs? And given the fact that today I'm sitting in Alabama and you're sitting in Grand Rapids and Mike, the producer behind the scenes, is in Grand Rapids, I know I wouldn't have wanted to come down to Alabama on a horse and drawn wagon. It would have been a really long and arduous trip, and I wouldn't be here. I think that's a very interesting thing. And I certainly understand where those they're coming from an ethical perspective. We don't want to willy-nilly remove jobs and have them taken over. At the same point in time, I think it's in my personal soapbox, I think it's important that we understand that whether we embrace these new technologies or not, the rest of the world is likely going to. I just read yesterday that, and not to get political, but China has a new version of their own chat GPT out now. And supposedly it's better and faster and all these other things. And to me, that type of incentive or that type of competition is good because I think it makes everybody better. But absolutely along the way, the downside to it is there are going to be jobs that are going to need to find new skills, new talents. Where I think it's exciting though is, again, taking you as an example, by embracing some of this AI, you're now able to do some things that maybe you weren't able to do before, or be able to do them more efficiently. Can you talk
Hmm.
to me a little bit about that in your business? You mentioned blogging, which I think is a great example. But
Yeah.
as a photographer, what are some of the other things that you're doing? How are you, as a small business owner and as a photographer, leveraging these new AI tools in your business? Can you share any of that with us
Yeah,
without giving away
absolutely.
trade secrets?
Absolutely. I don't mind sharing trade secrets, actually.
I
Uh,
appreciate it, Carrie.
I feel that community is better than competition. I have a lot of photographer friends that we're great friends. We share together, and then we refer clients to each other when we can't take on what we're
Absolutely.
looking at. Anyway, so I personally, the first thing I started doing with AI is there's a program out there called, I'm not even sure how to say it, so I'm probably going to slaughter it. Imagine Imagine AI. It's
Okay.
IMAGENAI. And basically, when I photograph a wedding, and there's another one called After Shoot. So when I photograph a wedding, I come home with 4,000 images. A lot of them are duplicates, a lot of them are people have blinked, pictures on the dance floor, people are moving and it's blurry. It just didn't quite work out right. Or I've snapped 10 pictures of a tree to try to get my settings figured out before I take the picture of the client. Film days, we didn't do that, of course, but with digital now, you just quick. And it used to be I would either myself sit down for 4 or 5 hours and start looking through these images to take out all the duplicates, take out the out of focus pictures, take out all the blanking pictures, that kind of stuff. Or I would have an employee who would do that for me. And now there's AI programs that can do that for me. So I can put them in there and it takes out anything that I can set the parameters where I want that. It takes out anything that's blurry, takes out anything, marks out anything where people's eyes are closed. When it's learning the software, because of course I'm not going to use that on a newborn baby that's sleeping because that would take out all the pictures of the newborn baby, right? Having a program be able to do that where I can just set it and walk away. And then I look through everything and if it looks good, I'm done. If I look at something and think, I don't like what they picked, let me look at what's there, I might change it. So there's still a little bit of human action in there. It's still got my touch to it in there as far as picking those out. So that's the first step. The second step is actually the corrections that I do digitally to pictures. When I'm adjusting things like exposure and brightness and contrast and saturation, when I'm going through and working on these pictures, you can now teach the AI your style. Where I used to have to go in, when I first started in photography, of course, the lab did that for me, right? I chose the film and the lab did all the adjustments for me. So then when we switched to digital, I would literally go through one image at a time and do that myself to every image at a time. And then things like the program I was talking about earlier, Lightroom came out where you could say all these pictures were taken at the same time in the same conditions. And so the adjustments are going to be all the same on these pictures. So now let's adjust these all the same. Now you can teach AI, this is my style. This is how I am usually edit my pictures. I like a little bit of a vignette on it. I like my contrast at this level. I like the brightness to be about here, and it learns. So I upload past catalog. It's called a catalog. Past catalogs of what I've edited and done the edits on, and now the AI will do it for me. So again, I do have to go in and check because it's not always perfect, but I look at it and go, yeah, it gets me about 80% of the way from the start, where now I can go in and I can make those final adjustments and say, yeah, that one's not quite right, or this isn't quite right. Now I can go in and adjust that. So what used to take me 2 full days of work might now take me about 4 to 6 hours. So it's just a lot more efficient that way. And now the same thing, they've incorporated AI into Photoshop and Lightroom. Now what I can do is do some basic photo editing to the images based on AI. So an example would be the AI in the Photoshop and Lightroom can pick out the skin and I can say I want the skin just a little bit softer. Most women don't like shine on their skin or something
Hmm.
like that. So I can I it'll it used to be I would have to brush it myself and brush it onto the skin manually myself. Whereas now I can push the button, it picks the skin, and then I adjust my sliders. Same thing with the eyes. I can brighten up eyes, I can whiten teeth. And not only can I do it by AI selecting those items, I can pick a group of pictures. So let's say, Jonathan, I photographed your headshots and you picked out 10 images that you want finished. I can take all 10 of those and say, look at Jonathan's eyes in all 10 of these pictures and make his eyes just a little bit brighter. And it will do it on all of them at one time based on its look. The AI looks for your eyes or looks for your skin or looks for your teeth or your hair. Anything that I want it to look at, it'll handpick that stuff out. To me, the a lot of times too, I would send out my retouching to a third party just because as a small business owner, I don't have time to do that. Whereas now a lot of that stuff is because I can do it at a faster pace. It's still hand done. I'm still picking those settings and adjusting that for what I think it needs to be, but yet it's just done so much faster now with the AI. So,
It really, yeah, I think you bring up some good points that I think are super interesting, especially talking about how AI is not replacing what you're doing. You're still guiding it. You're still giving it the direction. You're still telling
yes.
it what to do. If anything, it's more acting like an assistant for you, but a highly trained assistant who follows instructions, at least in my experience, most of the time, where
Yes.
sometimes AI goes off the rails and you're like, whoa, I didn't
Yeah.
mean that. But that happens with a human assistant too, where there's a misunderstanding. So
Yeah.
I think that's normal. But I love how you describe that, and I think it's cool to hear about some of those tools. Not being a professional photographer, I wasn't even aware of some of that. I've read
Mhm.
about some of the Photoshop and the Lightroom changes, but the rest of it, what great tools again to make you better. It reminds me of my son's a mechanic for the airlines, and it reminds me there that he has so many specialized tools to do certain things, and not only does he have great knowledge, not taking any of that away, but the tools he has allows him to be efficient in getting that job done. And he
Mhm.
shares with me so often how this specific tool will allow him to do a job in 5 minutes. And with a standard tool like I have in my toolbox, it might take half an hour just because of the tool that he has. And it strikes me as the same way that you're using this in your photography business. These are AI tools that you're using to, again, speed up your workflows, be more efficient, hopefully as a business owner be more profitable, while at
Yeah.
the same point in time giving you the ability to potentially serve more customers as well. So a win on all fronts, truly across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't talked about Midjourney yet.
I was going to say, so I think a lot of our listeners are probably more familiar, although not a lot, with Midjourney. And for those that aren't, Midjourney is a, and correct me if I say this wrong, Carrie, but Midjourney is a graphical creation tool that uses generative AI to create images. I know
Mhm.
there's some big issues with that because it's learned how to create images by essentially vacuuming up millions of images off the internet, many of which are copyrighted images, to
Yep.
learn how to do this. In fact, I actually did a Midjourney image the other day, and it ended up, I couldn't tell what it was, but it actually added a signature in the bottom right. So I'm like, okay, I know that this is using some artist's photo to generate this because it actually regenerated what was a, I couldn't read it, but again, a signature in the bottom right of the photo. Talk to me as a professional photographer. One, thoughts on Midjourney in general, and then two,
Mhm.
is it something you're using or are people in the industry using it, and how might they be doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally have not used Midjourney myself very much. I played around, dabbled with it just a little bit, just to see what was out there. I've talked to a lot of
Hmm.
people on both sides. So I have friends of mine who are photographers who are very against it for the copyright issues. They're afraid that their work is being stolen in some manner through Midjourney. Not that Midjourney is producing the exact same thing. So there's a lot of people who are very against it. Then there's the side of people who have embraced it. And so I look at the different uses of how they're embracing it, and I think they're great. Personally, I haven't. So let me give you a couple examples of how I've seen some photographers embrace it. I have friends who do beautiful, creative digital art. So let me give you an example is they photograph a woman in a beautiful flowing dress on a green screen or a white backdrop in the studio. And then they have gone out and found this beautiful castle with golden lighting and all these elements, and they digitally manipulate the photo that they took of the woman in the beautiful dress and put it into whatever kind of scene they're doing, and they go through and then they paint it all and blend them together and give it a painted look. So they're creating an art piece more than a photograph. And so what I've found that those types of photographers have really embraced the mid journey for that background option. So they can any kind of scene that they want. They can it used to be they would pull stock photos, they would scour for their own locations, and they're on vacation in Italy and they take the picture of the beautiful castle themselves and put it in a stock library, but maybe they didn't get to go to Italy or somebody wants something else that's in Germany. So now they can go on mid journey and totally describe the feel in the art piece and the design that they're looking for. So it's very creative, the creative side of it. They're just very much embracing that. Anything you want to describe. You want cool lighting, you want warm lighting, you want mountain scene, castle scene, indoor scene, blue tones, red tones, flowers, no flowers, whatever. You just keep describing that in mid journey and mid journey, keep working with it, and you can create these beautiful masterpieces. I've also seen background companies using Midjourney now. So an example is I'll buy from a background company, I'll buy a specific background, hang it in my studio and photograph somebody in front of that background so that's behind them. And now what they're doing is those background companies are going on Midjourney and creating those backgrounds through AI instead of through other means. So other means they would have actually done photographs or they would have done some sort of painting, that kind of thing to get that background created. Whereas now they're using AI, creating that background and then printing the background for photographers to use. I've seen a lot of business headshot photographers use and create backgrounds for their clients because it's funny. Clients will call me and they'll be like, "Oh, I want a really cool office in the background and with lots of windows." And I'm like, "Great. Do you have a place we can go?" And they go, "No." And I'm like, "That's not my studio. My studio doesn't have that." And in the past, what I've done in the past for those type of clients is again, I go to stock photography and find images that match. Whereas I've heard some of those type of photographers now because they can be so specific, they're not just looking through stock for something that might meet their needs. They're going in mid journey and they're creating what they want to meet their needs exactly, the exact color tones that they want in the office, the exact lighting coming in from the left, because that's another thing. Anytime you're compositing in photography, you want the lighting in the background to match the lighting on your subject. And so, you can control that in mid journey. You can't control that when you're looking through stock images. You might find something that works or doesn't work, and this one will do. In mid journey, you're creating the light coming from the left and you want these color tones that match the client's branding, that kind of stuff. So those are some areas that I've seen photographers and photography companies like the background companies and stuff using Midjourney to elevate their business and do well with that. I think the people who are worried about it, rightfully, are people who were the people who were doing those jobs before, just like you talked about the horsewhip, and people who maybe create those graphics for stock photography or create those graphics for the background companies. Those are the people that don't like the ideas because it's essentially they need to change their business model to help something that they're doing is starting to get taken over.
Makes a lot of sense. And those are some great examples, I think. What struck me as you talked through that, Carrie, though, is that this is still a creative process. These photographers that are embracing this, it's not just a matter of going in and pressing the easy button and getting the perfect background or the
Right.
perfect castle or they're actually doing what I would call generative process themselves by going through, and they're starting at a starting point. Reminds me of the old days in the film lab. Candidly, I remember taking a class when I was learning about photography, and we'd go in and we'd dodge and we'd burn it with chemicals and our hands in front of the light and different things and all that to bring out aspects of photos. And it really almost strikes me as the same type of process. I know a bit different, but doing that through Midjourney to iteratively create and improve upon what they get until they finally get that exact image that they're looking for. Very interesting.
Hmm. I compare AI to other. The thing I keep going back to is a calculator. I look at AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. The can is already opened and it's not going back in the can. So I look at my parents who told me they didn't have calculators when they were kids. And then when I was in school, we weren't allowed to use our calculator at school. We had to show our work on paper and write everything out. And we had calculators, but they were like cheating. If you used a calculator, cheating. Then my kids had to have this $200 calculator that had these features on it to help progress them in math because that's what they needed to get their math work done. That's what I think about this AI. There's always going to be people who, in the beginning of things, it's like the smartphones. When smartphones first came out, people, what? My kids don't even think about a smartphone. They don't, they know their smartphones listening to them or whatever that is. But technology changes and it's here, and we just need to figure out how to use it and how to embrace it.
I think that's great advice for all of us, regardless in the business that we're in. And I love your analogy. I've used that with my son. I have a 15-year-old that's going through high school, and he's very pleased to know the fact that we are encouraging him to use these tools.
Yeah.
Obviously, not in a cheating way, but to help him be more efficient with things. As an example, he used it the other day to proofread a report that he'd written. He still
Yeah.
wrote the report, but we used AI to proofread it, and that was great because what would have normally been either my mom, I'm sorry, his mom, my wife, or myself
Yeah.
doing it, he was able to do, and it worked out well. And I know I've had some business owners go, "I can't believe you let your kid do that." And I'm like, if I'm looking to hire someone, to me, the value of that person that I'm hiring to use the tools to find the right answer is higher than the value of someone that thinks they've memorized all the answers, because
Yeah.
nobody can memorize all the answers. And like you said, things are always changing. So I want to look for those individuals that know how to use the tools that are available, just like our kids use those calculators now.
Hmm.
And if they go into an engineering field or a statistical field, they're going to have computer programs to do all that for them. They just need to understand the concepts, not
Yeah.
necessarily how to carry the one. That's not as important. As you look at your crystal ball, what do you see coming in the next year to 2 years in the photography world? And how do you think that technology is going to continue to evolve in your field in particular, Carrie?
Yeah, I am not a forward thinker that way. I
Fair
I wait
enough. No
till I
problem.
hear it. Again, I really think AI is going to become prevalent. So here's another example. I enter a lot of competitions, and that's a big deal now because people are assuming that people, and it's been proven people have used AI images and entered it in a competition as they took it. There was one recently, and I can't remember who it was, so forgive me, but he did it as an experiment to see, and he actually won the grand prize and won the photography competition just to say he could. And he came out after with a prize and said, "Guess what? I didn't take it. It's AI." The competitions are, I think, going to start requiring, just like back in school, we had to require our work, show your work on the paper. You have to show your work. They're going to require the raw files from your camera versus a finished photograph. You're going to have to prove that you did something like that. But as far as the technology and things changing, the things change so fast, and the cameras now, of course, we're all on the mirrorless cameras, and every time you turn around something changes, and you don't think it's going to change that fast, but it does. I'm not one to guess what the technology is going to change. I just hear about the technology and go, that is cool. Yes, I need that. Or yeah, I don't need to throw my money at that. Mine's still working okay. So
I think, again, really good advice for business owners in general is look at those new technologies, embrace the ones that help you do a better job and run your business better, and be aware that not every bright, shiny object is going to help you do a better job. I think
Right.
that's very wise advice. And I know I've certainly wasted some money on some technologies over the years that are now sitting in a dustbin, essentially being unused because the glitz of the advertisement never proved to be quite true in reality. Oh, absolutely. Carrie, one of the things we always do on our podcast, we call this the 91 Day Success Podcast. And I didn't prep you much for this, but I love to ask anyway. With everything going on in the economy, we love to encourage entrepreneurship. And that sometimes means starting a new gig or starting over from scratch. And so I asked all of our guests, if you had to start over, you'd have all the skill sets you have now, but you wouldn't have your money. You don't have to worry about a house. You don't have to worry about food or anything like that. But I gave you $1,000 and said, Carrie, in the next 3 months, which turns out to be 91 days, do whatever you think you can to build a good, solid, profitable business. What would you do, knowing your skills, knowing what's happening in, it can be your industry, it could be another industry, doesn't matter. What things would you do to build your business in the first 91 days with a small budget like that?
Yeah, there's two things that I would do with a small, I don't know, small budget. The first is networking. So joining whatever kind of networking uh, groups that you can take advantage of, chambers, BNI, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So if you join those networking group, you're building connections, you're building that face to face. You're going to meet people who you can talk to, and a lot of times those have a small fee involved of some sort. So there would be that, and then marketing. That's the other thing. The two things that I think are most important right now. Google is king in marketing, and making sure you have a good internet presence, because that's where between the two, between the networking and the Google presence, because there's going to be those people and the types of jobs that need referral. So an example is a wedding. A wedding, I have tried all kinds of marketing for weddings, and weddings come from word of mouth. The paid advertising, the paid marketing that I have done for weddings, you want a good web presence because they're going to double check your web presence. But
Mhm.
it all comes from word of mouth. I had this photographer, she was fantastic. She ran on time, she did things. And then there's the clients that I've got 100 employees that I need headshots for. I got to buy toilet paper, I got to stock my office supplies, and I got to find a headshot photographer. So they go on Google and they find a headshot photographer. Between the two, the marketing and the web presence, and then the in-person networking are the two things that I would spend that $1,000 on.
No, great advice. And actually, that's how you and I met, was back through the Granville Jennison Chamber. Like I said, probably close to 10 years ago now.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
remember exactly, but it was a long time ago. And I know that at that stage of our business, we're in year 13 now, that was a critical way to build our business. And that networking paid off in spades as far as the time and money invested as how it allowed us to grow our business. Great advice. Very good advice. So,
yeah. Thanks.
Carrie, if people are watching and they go, wow, I'd love to have Carrie photograph my family, my business, headshots, whatever it may be. We're going to add all your contact information here, but if they happen to be driving down the road right now and they can't grab that, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you and get you scheduled to talk to them about their photography?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be to go to my website, and I actually have two websites. I have one geared towards business and headshots and that type of thing. GrandRapidsHeadshots.com, easy to remember. Go through there, send me a message, and you can book appointments online. I have auto schedulers set up, or if you want to pick up the phone and call me through that, you go right ahead and do that. And then I have another website, KariDoumaPhotography.com, and that one is more of my portrait work, seniors, high school seniors, babies, weddings, that kind of thing.
Awesome. I certainly appreciate that. And I can tell you, I have seen Carrie's photographs for years now. She is an amazing photographer. If you're looking for a professional, and it's worth the small investment to get the right lighting, to get the right focus, to make sure that the people that you want to remember look great, call Carrie. She'll do an amazing job. Simple as that.
Thank you.
So, oh, absolutely. Carrie, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it greatly. I know you're busy and we've been trying to plan this, I know, for a bit of time. So thank you so
Yes,
much
thank you.
for joining. Oh no. It's great, and I really do appreciate your time. So,
Yes,
with that,
thank you.
if you stuck with us to the end of the podcast, I want to say thank you. We always cherish your views and listening, and I just want to tell you to have a great day, and we will see you on the other side. Make it a great day, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.